And we are live. Hey, Randy Stroman here, and welcome to our weekly Transformation Denmark call. And we got a special treat for you this week because we have not just a subject matter expert, but we have an author and creator of a very unique program that we do plan to use in Denmark. And so I'm very excited. And Tanya, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a little bit about your background, and then go in and share with us maybe a little bit of how the program came into existence and what you're doing with it right now. And then I'm sure the team's going to have some questions for you.
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Again, my name is Tanya Miller, and I'm located here in Berlin, Ohio. It is just south of Cleveland, Ohio. And I have been a part of this organization for 10 years, starting this month in September. I'm on my anniversary here. And I had originally started working as an executive assistant to Jerry Anderson, who is in charge of several global nonprofit organizations, who takes ethical values to presidents, leaders, and community government officials, military officials, executives, that kind of thing. And so I was his assistant. And so we had many high-level meetings with him and getting these groups of organizations in the government to go through what we call a roundtable, and where they take a chosen value of the week and they discuss it, and there's some action steps with that value. And then you meet the next week and talk about your successes and your failures with that value, and then discuss a new value. And so we've worked with many presidents of nations, heads of military, and then as we had evolved with this organization called Global Priority Solutions, we had a meeting, an international meeting in Florida, and everybody was saying, "Hey, we have so much information and this really great material for high-level governments and executives, but what do we have for like the bottom up? We need to get younger. We need to get into the younger age groups." And that's where I said, "Hey, maybe I think I could maybe help with that," and kind of threw that out to the group. And so I sat down with the same ethical values that Global Priority uses, and we outlined a character program for schools. So here in North America, what's actually around the globe, we would say it's character and leadership development. That's what we, or character ed is what we focus on. And so we had created a program for school systems, not exactly knowing, because we're not educators, not exactly knowing where this would fit in. And here we found out in North America and several Latin countries that we're already in, we are an international program, that we were in the perfect age group for students about 13 to 15. So in North America, we call it middle school. And so in that middle school or secondary education, in that middle school range, there is not a lot of information out there, a lot of character programs for that age group. There's a lot for high school ages, teenage years, 15 through 18, you're getting into more prevention programs, anti-drug, not texting and driving, that kind of thing, anti-alcohol, but then in pregnancy prevention programs. But then in the younger grades, there's a lot of kind of character programs. But when it came to middle school, which is the hardest, if many of you know or can remember yourself, it's the hardest age group. And so when we have this niche, and so when the doors opened here in the United States was in 2012, our first public school system said, "Hey, we want to sign on for this." And we had 3 schools. That was 545 students in 2012. And we had so much success from that. We take a mentor from the community who has a passion for this, for youth, and who understands the values, lives by the values. We train them, we put them in the school system for 10 sessions. We ask for 10 weeks in the school system. and we had exponential results. It was just amazing. Actually, I was one of the mentors to make sure that this was working well in our pilot, even though I was the co-author of this program. And we were meeting, after my third meeting, the teacher came to me, Mrs. Morris, and she had been teaching for probably 35 years at that time. She's very near retirement now. And she said, "Hey, are you guys going to be around for a while?" And I said, "Well, I hope so." And she said, "Because this is what I want to do when I retire." And I knew when she said that we were right in target. If a teacher and educator who's been around for 35 years is endorsing this program, we have something. So the following year, we went from 545 students to 2,700. Then we went to 7,200, and now we're over 10,000 students. So we had exponential growth since 2012. So we're really excited about the growth patterns that we've had and the metrics that we do receive from the students. So after the 10 sessions, we have them do a summative survey of what they learned, and 88% of the students have said this program has been proven effective. And we are so thrilled with that. But what we also have are thousands and thousands and thousands of remarks that the students made to our donor base, because we have donors that help support the program in their local community. And these donors receive these comments from the students, and these comments will just make your day and blow you away. And it was blowing the school system away of the transformation that they were able to see within 10 weeks. So that's our program. I mean, we're always evolving. I'm training in materials. That's what I focus on, and I help other regions get started on our model that we have to fundraise and build a base. So that's what we do, and that's what I've been doing. And my next trip was to St. Thomas, but due to Hurricane Irma, that was canceled. 2 of our schools have been annihilated in St. Thomas, so we're really sad about that, but they should be up and running in December, so I'll probably be going back down in January to train. So we do trainings all over the globe, and they come here and many people from around the nation, our nations, come to Berlin, Ohio for this specialized training on how to connect with youth and and empower youth to change their world. So that's what I do. And you can go to our website at antivirusyouth.org. You can see we have a primary grade curriculum. So that's like the ages 8 through 9. We have a program for them. And then the middle school programs, grade ages 13 through 15. And then we also have high school programs through Global Priority Solutions that you can get involved with if you have interest. So does anybody have any questions? Or Randy, is there anything that I missed that you wanted me to cover?
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to have lots of questions, and I'm going to get
Sure.
to that in a second. I just want to make sure the website again was what?
Antivirusyouth.org.
Okay, antivirusyouth.org. Okay.
That's right.
And so let me just start with one question, and then I want to go around and give others an opportunity. And maybe you said it. I was trying to get my iPad set up to take notes, so I might have missed it. I know how the program came into existence, but how did you come up with the name?
Yeah, that's a great question. It used to be called Fundamentals or Fundamentals, and we had the original script. It was called Anti-Current, that you need to be the salmon that swims against the stream, the current of against the current of corruption and our bad behavior for primary grades. And so when we started to let educators read our curriculum, like the outline that we have, our drafts, nobody in the continental North America wanted to talk about corruption on the table. Like when we've worked a lot in Latin America, everybody talks about corruption in Latin America, in Africa, corruption, Ukraine, they talk about corruption all the time. But here in the North American continent, we just didn't really want to talk about there's just corruption all around us. So one of my friends, and she's a curriculum writer as well, Her name is Chris Bauer. She said, what if we termed it, instead of a current, a virus? And then it just started to unfold exactly when she brought up this concept to us. I was like, I know exactly what I could write with that virus, with the current, because we were so focused in Latin America and grabbing some concepts that we had learned from Latin America. I was running into issues on like writer's blocks, because it wasn't our language in the US and Canada. And then when we decided to change it into an antivirus, that we are fighting a virus, it just matched. And then when we looked up one of the definitions on Merriam-Webster, that Merriam-Webster definition says that a virus can infect three things. And it can infect your health, and it can infect your mind, and it can infect your morals. And so then it just clicked. Like, we just saw the graphics, everything just unfolded like a Rolodex in my mind. It just spun, and I could see exactly how this program was going to lay out. And when we changed that concept, then and then seeing what Webster said, we were able to identify and have teaching concepts for the students. Like, tell me, what is a moral? Because a lot of the students don't really know what a moral is, especially at 13. And we have found that the ones that do know what a moral is, they go to some kind of faith-based organization. But they all understood a personal law, a personal rule that you make with yourself. And so then through that, we were able to lay out the viruses in our lives that can corrupt us or lead us into bad behavior, like lying to parents, cheating on tests, risky behavior, unmotivation, not being motivated, wasting time, addiction to video games, vandalism, drugs. All these things started to outline. So that's how we got the name antivirus. And it was through that educator that helped us and guide us for what fit our culture at that time.
Excellent. Thank you. And the first hand I saw go up was Henrik, so I'm going to unmute him first. You had a question?
Yeah, it was basically the web page, but I managed to get it right and was watching it. Is this something that you can implement into Danish schools, maybe? Use a kind of, I don't know, copy paste, and then do a department in Denmark that can do something like that?
Well, that is definitely something that we are considering on doing in Denmark, and what we have to work with you guys and Debbie and Randy on what works best for your country. So I'm not sure if they're in American, if they use American English, I guess English text or not. Some of your international schools will, but these are values that you don't want them to miss. So that is more what is important to me, is that they understand the concepts that we're bringing, and we don't have this translated into your native language. So that would be some questions that we would need to lay out through copywriting. We would have to work out that we can't. This is not something that you can send and click and print. It's an 88-page workbook. So what we tell the students, this actually becomes like a personal journal to them. And it's actually funny to me. Many of my students at the end of the school year, it's purge time, get rid of all your books. And many of the parents have responded back to us and said, hey, my student said, no, I want to keep that, because that was like my journal for 10 weeks. And there's information in there that I want to look back on. And so that is what is so empowering, even for our donors, knowing that where they're giving their money to is being well spent, that we're being a good usher for their funding. So that's how it is. So yeah, so we would definitely have some things that we would need to talk about in order to get it into your country.
Yeah, because it's definitely something that we need in the Danish schools. It's too old school is the way they teach today. They don't really teach children how to motivate themselves. That's what I experienced with my own children. So it's definitely something.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's exactly what we deal with in the U.S. school systems as well. The students will tell us, hey, Mrs. Miller, nobody ever takes the time to talk to me about this. They only care about my marks, my grades. They want to make sure my test scores are so good. But nobody actually is sitting down and talking to me about how to make my life better and how to make better choices, even through school. But of course, what happens at home and what happens at school can impact and infect actually how their school life is and how their home life is. So let's talk about these things to make your life more successful. So we have 2 volumes. We have volume 1. Volume 2 was just released. It's a much more less version of the first program, and we just came out with that. And volume 2 is 6 concepts, so it's a 6-week program. And what we say is volume 1 is we teach students how to make life work. And on volume 2 is how to make me work. So we talk about more interpersonal perspectives like attitude, understanding people, self-esteem, hope. Those kinds of values are what we bring out in the volume 2. But volume 1 is where we've seen the most impact on where almost every student is globally, on how to make their life work right now. And so those 7 concepts are, number 1 is attitude or is ambition. If you don't have a goal, if you don't know where you're going, then you can't get there. And so is ambition, then it's responsibility. Once you know where you want to go or you know what you want to be, this is what responsibility will look like. See, what happens with our character program, and many educators have responded back to us and said, this is the first character program that actually unpacks why you need character. And that's what we focus on. All of our mentors are trained. You focus on the rewards, because the student, if they don't know what's in it for them, then they're not going to invest in it. They're not going to care about it. But when we sit down and say, this is why this is important for you, and this is what door will open for you if you do these things every day, because every day character is a choice. Making good behavior, sound decisions, good quality decisions are choices you make every day. These are the doors that can open up for your success. And they're like, hey, this is where the impact is. And they're like, man, nobody's ever talked to me. It's just my mom is always telling me, do these things. My dad is always saying, just be this way. But I never understood why. And so it's really a self-revelation for them, and through self-discovery that says, now I know why this works. Because it worked for me, it can work for you. Then the third value we talk about is hard work. And that's actually, believe it or not, for all of you who are parents, you'll be happy to hear this. Hard work is the most popular value we talk about. It's unbelievable. And then the 4th value is emotions, how to control your emotions, anger, and then restraint, how to control the words that come out of your mouth. Common sense, think before you act, and then last one we end on is generosity.
Absolutely brilliant. I'm looking very forward to it.
Thank you, Henrik. Appreciate that. Okay, who's got the next question? Okay, I see Mariella. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I find this very interesting. I haven't checked on the website yet, but I would like to know if one can see already the countries where the program is already existing, or where it's been implemented. So I would like to know which countries,
yes,
especially in Africa.
Yeah, that's great. I can tell you in the United States, I can tell you specifically states that have implemented this. And in the U.S., it's majority of the students are in Ohio, which I'm glad for because it's where I live and it makes it easier for travel.
Yeah.
The other is California, and the other is Florida, and then Arizona. Now, understand something in the U.S. What happens in Ohio, because Ohio is a big political state. What happens in Ohio in education, typically the rest of the states do. So there's 3 states that kind of dictate all of what the public education does. It's what happens in Ohio, Florida, and Texas. And so we have a presence in both, in Ohio and in Florida. Okay, so that's important for you to know because politically we have a lot of power. So when the Ohio Department of Education said, we want you to come and meet with us, that's what happened. We didn't call the Ohio Department of Ed. They called us. The Ohio Department of Education said, we heard about what you're doing. We heard about your growth, and we want to know more about what you are doing. And then they wanted to offer us a designation of a best practice, which is one of the highest honors any educational program can receive. that you are best practice. That means you are proven. If there's metrics there to prove our effectiveness. So that was really big when the Ohio Department of Education gave that to us. Now, as far as other nations, we're in almost all of Latin America. Colombia, Venezuela, Paraguay. We're in Mexico, Guatemala. We are also in Costa Rica, and we are also in Nigeria and Uganda, and then Egypt. Those are the countries that we have presence in. I have met with Parliament in Ukraine, but obviously through some of their issues that they've had other actually corruption issues that they've had to fight. But I've met with several Parliament members in Ukraine before, and also in London. Mm-hmm.
All right. One more question. Anyway, maybe I will get to understand more, but I would like to know, how do you move into a country? Do you partner with people or companies to implement the education into the school system?
Sure, that's a great question. Here in our regions, in Ohio or in the U.S., schools do not have funding for this initiative. Government next to never has money for initiatives. There's grants and things that you can apply for, but they can be somewhat hard to receive. So what we do is and actually our governmental leaders in Ohio had told us, stay grassroots, keep this out of politics. And I don't know if Denmark, you can laugh at that or agree with it, but they always say keep things grassroots, keep moving with the momentum that you have by building your donor base. So that's what we do, is we go to local donors in the community and say, they set up their own 501c3, and would you be willing to donate to this 501c3, a nonprofit, and it would be a source of advertising for your business to be a part of this. But really, you just care about your own backyard. You care about your kids and your grandkids and your employees and where your future employees are coming from. And that's why we're doing a Character Edge program. So we are not funded. Majority of our organizations or school systems, our districts, are either they pay for it themselves, which 1 or 2 schools in the over 60 districts pay for their own material, but the majority of them, 99%, are funded by somebody in the community.
Okay.
Excellent.
Or corporate sponsors. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mariella. So let me ask you then, it sounds like the model of this is the exact opposite of the Roundtables program, which is very specifically a top-down approach. And you're saying, no, turn the funnel upside down.
Right. What our organization, what Jerry, the president of the Global Priority Solutions organization, said, it's great we work from the top down, but we need to make sure we're also reaching down to the next generation and pulling them up, raising them up with values, because a lot of home environments are not like it was back in the 50s. And when baby boomers grew up. So let's pull them up into understanding what life means. And with this technology-driven society, that we have to communicate to these generations, the next generation, that the value of people and being with people is what makes your life successful, not how much you know or are on your devices. Right. So you still have to have a relationship with people. And so we talk about those kinds of values in the classroom.
So have you had anybody reject the material based on content?
Never one.
Interesting.
No, and we have never lost a school. Let me rephrase that. We lost one school this year due to administrative changes in the school. So it's not because of the program. It's because of, we have a new superintendent and a new principal, and it was too late to make a decision on this program. So even though we are working with the students, we still use the same philosophy with the yes to the school system, getting this approved in the school system. If the top leaders are not involved and not giving us the yes, then we don't usually launch into the school system. So the head dean or the superintendent and the principal has to say, yes, I am approving this and I want my teachers to allow this in the classroom. We still use that top-down approach, but our focus is the younger generation.
Okay, and I see Pia has a question. I'm going to come to you in just a second. That stirred a question in me. So then, do you use the teachers to help execute this, or are you bringing insiders or outsiders in to actually facilitate these discussions?
Absolutely. In 99% of our school systems, an outside member of the community is trained, and they're certified through me. And they bring this program, they partner with the teacher, but they're coming in almost like what a substitute teacher would look like, but the teacher's still in the building, the teacher's still in the classroom. And that outside person would facilitate and mentor antivirus. So it gives the teacher a break. You become like a partner in the classroom, like a blessing to the teacher, because the teacher oftentimes will turn around and say, what am I going to do without you for 10 weeks? Every Thursday, I was able to catch up on all my work. I loved it, and I loved what the content was. So it becomes a win-win situation. And so the mentor is there in the classroom. The teacher is working on her own curriculum. Now she's also there, or he's there, in case the classroom gets maybe too out of hand, that the mentor doesn't want to handle certain disciplinary issues, but the teacher's there to crack down on that. We don't typically have that problem, but that's what they're also there for in the classroom.
Interesting. Very good. Okay, let me go to Pia. You are unmuted. What's your question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much. It was so interesting, very interesting. I was just thinking that on your way through the schools, haven't you sort of also making roundtables for the teachers? I mean, make a separate roundtable program for teachers, because they are very stressed out. That is one question. And another question is it a good idea to approach a country when the John Maxwell team comes to our country? Because by that time, a lot of influential people from the educational system has got to know about it and will see its values. So would it strategically be a good time to approach the Danish education system? Because I honestly don't think we can go from school to school in Denmark. I have been a teacher myself, and I know a little bit of the school system, but maybe I'm a pessimist.
So if I understand what you're saying, Pia, is that you're saying that in Denmark, a localized school would not have the authority to make this decision, that it have to be done at a ministry level.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Tanya, what do you think of that?
I think that's awesome. And we have, in many of our Latin countries, it is mandated by the ministries of education to do this. So that's not something we're not foreign to. We've never done before. We have definitely gone to the ministry, approached the Ministry of Education. Actually, in the nation of Colombia, it is a ministry and mandate that all schools go through antivirus in the nation of Colombia. Same thing with Paraguay. We have thousands, 150,000 students going through this. And a lot of that is because of John Maxwell's presence. Maybe I need to make that clear that John Maxwell is a part of my advisory board for antivirus. We are in the good graces of him that he donates a day out of all the organizations in the U.S. He donates a day to us, one day, to help us raise some money. So we're so thankful for what he does for our organization. If you open up the curriculum, you will see in the table of contents, you will see John Maxwell's face, actually full body picture, or mostly full body picture, endorsing the program to educators. So that is how we have also a lot of inroads into the school systems and ministries of education. So that is doable. We would love to have those, explore those avenues. If you have connections to those avenues, I'm sure Randy and Debbie would love to know those and how through you and how we can get that facilitated. But as far as using John Maxwell coaches, this is the third time in 3 days, Friday and today. Maybe it's 2 working business days that I have certified and trained John Maxwell coaches for antivirus, and they keep asking the exact same question. Why is this not brought up in the John Maxwell coaching? Because we feel that this program is so needed and we need to deploy these people into the school systems to do this program. So this keeps coming up. So I'm going to definitely talk about this with the John Maxwell organization and how we can continue to grow that. Did I miss another part of your question?
Pia, did that answer your question?
I think it did, yes. Yes,
I think, Pia, what it means is that we need to get those of you that are interested in the education pillar, we need to get together and put a strategy together of how we approach, who we approach, what those steps would look like. And we begin working on that almost simultaneously but independently of what we're doing with the broader national movement.
Yes, because I have this goal. I have this goal that this should be a part of the curriculum in the Danish school system. Definitely.
Yeah. And do you think there's any issue with it being solely in English? Are we going to have to translate this, or can we do it in English?
Oh, I will have to read the text first before I can answer that. I'll have to see the materials. I have translators. I have already talked with translators, so it's not a problem to be for me to for it to be translated. But I will have to look through the material to really evaluate on it. Is it or is it too hard? Is it or is it not too hard to speak about your inner life, your feelings in English? I can't answer that without looking at the materials.
Okay, very good. Yeah. All right, we're going to get this stuff into your hands. I see you, Henrik. I'll be with you in a second. So we'll get this into your hands. Any follow-up question? Yeah?
No, not really. I'm just so excited about it.
Good. Well, very good. Very good. Okay, let me see. I want to come back to Henrik. Did I see somebody else's hand go up, though, before that? Okay, Fleming, I thought I saw somebody on that side of my screen. Let me come to you, Henrik. I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Fleming.
Denmark is a lot of private schools and a lot of border schools, and they actually have their own opinion what they are introducing to their students. And the other part is that we actually have governmental access, but a lot of problems in Denmark is actually not corruption. We don't have a lot of that, but we have a lot of loneliness. A lot of people are very, very alone, and a lot of people are following the crowd and never stepping out of it. We even have young people not bathing because their body is not fit for bathing with other people when they're doing the gym or other things. So that's actually a lot of issues. And if
Sure.
hear what you say, and I hear that you've been in Colombia and Ukraine and Paraguay and Guatemala and so on, and what I heard when I was at the IMC this time was that John was going to make a youth curriculum. I don't know if that's matching antivirus, but he was going to introduce that to 3 million Africans.
Yes, I think what I do know of what John is doing is he is creating a high school program.
Yeah.
So that would be like ages 16 through 18. And he is called I Choose. If that's the one he's talking about, is I Choose. And I am actually involved with his, with the direction of where I Choose is going. So I'm very well aware of what he's doing, and I think he's wanting to launch that in Paraguay because of his connection there, and it's already translated into that language, but it is for the older teenage group who is getting ready to go into the university realm.
But the further we can touch the youth because we actually only have our children 3 weeks in the summer, and luckily sometimes in the weekend, because the government is educating our children, because we're working a lot. So it's not us educating our children, it's the government educating our children.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you follow
So this
that
would
one?
be a great resource.
So a
This
lot
would
of
be a
people
great resource for your
is
group.
actually moving automatic pilot and no thinking.
Yeah. So this would be an excellent, I think, an excellent addition to what they're doing right now. Let me jump over to Henrik and get your follow-up question.
Yeah, I just wanted to get back to the translation part. I think to get the Danish youth comfortable with the material, it should basically be in Danish. That's at least what I think. But for older, what do you call it, children, like my son, 15, English could probably be a better stepping stone for the international language also. But I think basically for younger people.
And where do you see that age break coming, Henrik?
I think if we take my son Sebastian at 11, I think the Danish language would be better, more comfortable for him, because he doesn't really know. I know they play a lot of PlayStation and stuff like that, and they learn a lot of English from YouTube. But to really understand the material, I think it has to be in Danish when you talk about young people at the age of 11, 12, 13 maybe. And then when you get up to 14, 15, 16, then it's a whole different ball game, because most of them already know the English language. So that's basically thought.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. We'll certainly take that under consideration. Of course, that creates, several challenges and opportunities. One, we have to go through a translation process, which we've done with the other values, but then you create a printing issue where we now have to figure out how to honor the copyright material and make sure that antivirus is compensated for anything that's created. We have a process in place on the roundtable side that we're going to be using. So I'm assuming that we'd be able to work something out on the antivirus side as well, but none of that's been done yet, of course. And then the other challenge that creates, and that's where we're at right now, Henrik, with the roundtables, is it creates a cash flow issue, because even if we get sponsors, we have to pay for that printing up front, and that happens even before we receive any money in return. So that means we've got to get the sponsors and donors first, and you got to do that on a product they can't see. So it's not, I'm not saying that it isn't doable. It's certainly doable, but we've got to make sure that it happens in a very specific pattern so that we get the funding, we get the legal stuff put in place, and we make all that work. And if we want to get moving on it, I don't want to get delayed in executing this. So would it make sense? Because I saw Pia nodding that you kind of agreed that 11-year-old to 12-year-old mark is the trip point, that perhaps maybe we start with English with the older kids and then translate and then move into the younger kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
But it's also a question of getting the biggest impact. And I think if sponsors and donors or whatever, who's going to put money into the tank, can see the effect of it from the United States and from Guatemala and other countries, they can relate to that. And I think it'll be no problem to raise money for it. That's my personal belief.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I want to see, does anybody else have questions? Debbie's waving at me, so go ahead, Debbie.
Tanya, I wanted to ask a question. What is the best way to introduce this into, like, if I'm familiar with a couple principals and they're good friends, what's the best way for me to introduce this to them?
Yes, it would just be sharing what you know, your knowledge about antivirus. You can take a look on the website. And of course, I can send you any promotional material, like there's PDF, information that you can click on just to empower you to feel more comfortable with this character development program. But really what we have found is values is an international language. So when you talk to people about how you about this program and how it changes students' values, it changes their culture, it changes their belief system. And that just excites people. And we have found that across just everybody we talk to in all kinds of nations, they're like, this is exactly what our youth need. And so, so sharing what you know, and then just saying, hey, let's have a conference call, just like what Randy and Deb are doing. I'm saying I'd like for you to do a conference call with them and just take a few minutes to talk and share what you have and see what doors could open. But just sharing is the best way that you can do that.
Okay. Can I ask you a question? Because I am, I don't want to say the word fluent with roundtables, but I've been through 2 trainings in Berlin. We've done roundtables for a couple years. I mean, I know roundtables as like a piece of my DNA. I do not know, I mean, this is the first time that we're really hearing to the detail that you're talking about antivirus. So like all of your stories, like the teacher who had been in the business for 35 years and all of your stories, I have my own GPS stories. So is there a one sheet, cheat sheet that you can give me about the success stories or about the things I'm supposed to tell people? And is there a short paragraph, like a 4, 5, 6 sentences and a video that I can send to these people so that it's coming from, it's correct versus I'm so excited about Tanya being on our call. I'm gonna, you know, I'm not gonna give it just the same way you are.
Sure. On our website, we do have a promotional video, and then of course there is information about who we are. So the very first thing you're going to see when you click on the antivirus website is a video that pops up right away. You can X out on it immediately if you don't, or turn your sound off. And then if you X out, then you actually get into the website. Okay. And then as far as our promotion material, we have all kinds of testimonies written on there that we can share with you. And so we would be happy to give that to you.
Okay. Can you tell me what
if you email me,
okay.
If you email me your email, I can send you a lot of information.
Perfect. And then you mentioned 2 age groups. You said antivirus was 13 to 15, but then you said something about a younger age group, like 11 to something.
We do have, like 3rd and 4th grade is, so like 8 to 9-year-olds.
Got it. And is that called something different?
It's called Antivirus Defenders.
Defenders. Okay. And what is the estimated cost for the donors to bring this into a school or whatever you're talking about?
Okay, yes. So if you do what we would call like the top tier of our program, where you're buying all the incentives, you're paying for the mentor to come in, which is, so you know, in the United States school systems, we do charge we give the mentors about $20 an hour. Okay. If they're in a half a day, they make $80. If they're in a full day, like they're there from the first bell to the last bell, then we give them $160 a day. That is about the equivalent of what a substitute teacher would make. Okay. And that's because we attract, that's part of what we attract and help, because schools are like, well, who's going to lead this? And if we're in an area we don't know anybody, we ask them, hey, do you have a really good sub that we could pull from you one day a week to do this? And they're like, oh, I know exactly what sub that would do this. And so that sub would not feel like they're losing money by doing this program, that it would just be enough their benefit for them to do the program financially. Because some substitute teachers, they need to make, that's that extra income for their life. Okay, so that, with that money included, and somebody setting up the school system, and it's up to that person to waive their fee or not, but we're saying $30 a student is kind of a good estimate to say to a donor. And that's including incentives and everything. That's like the top tier. Now, some of our school systems can't afford, in areas like in Florida, they can't go for that top tier. So they may take their pay for the mentor back to $15 an hour and not buy all the incentives. But the book, the most important thing is the workbook, and the workbook is $8 a piece.
Okay.
Retail online. If you don't order online, if you want to order through me, I can give you a student discount. But online, it will be retail cost at $11. So we give each person $8. It's a workbook.
And how long is the certification with you for a mentor or for a student teacher?
Let's talk about that. So the antivirus workshop is what we call it. Educators call these kinds of things workshops. These workshops are one day, about 6 hours, and we charge $99 a person, or depending on where we're going. It's usually $99 a person is what we charge.
Okay, and what's the time implementation like? Let's just say we have this call with our team now. What would this look like for Denmark? Because we've got for sure 2 people on this call that have been begging us to get you on the call. So knowing that we have 2 people for sure or more that really have a heart for youth, what would that look like? What's the time frame? So like we don't get disappointed and think it's supposed to roll out tomorrow. Like, what is the time frame for them to cultivate the soil of the schools? And is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 weeks? So that we have an understanding and an expectation.
Perfect. Good question. We have found a lot of school districts work about a year in advance. So if you approach a school now, I'm not sure in Denmark when they kick off school, but our school's kicked off kind of like the middle of August to the end of August. That's our kickoff because we go in the agricultural year calendar cycle. So we go from from August until about the second week of June is typical in an American school systems. Okay. So with that being known, if I would approach a school system today, they might bring me on in January, right after the new year, or they want you to start the following school year. Because many of the principals and superintendents will say one thing: we want our students to know this is our platform. We are living by these values at the beginning of the school year, not the end of the school year. This is what our school is standing for.
Okay. And
we want our students.
No.
Yes.
So go ahead.
No, they're just saying we want our students to know that we're going to live by ambition. We're going to be responsible. We're going to control our emotions, all those kinds of things at the beginning of the school year.
And how would this roll out for Denmark? Now that you've been on the call, what would our steps be with you to implement this into the country of Denmark? What would that look like?
Yes, it would be connection, and talking about it everywhere you go with anybody who has anything to do with education, running a school system, school boards, ministries of education, just connecting and telling them about this program, and then getting a good base going. Well, some people, what they do, like in Florida, said, I want to sit down with 2 or 3 superintendents that I know or principals and talk to them about this program. Then see if we can get a conference call going on. Like we could do a FaceTime call, we can do a Skype call, all kinds of calls. I have WebEx. We can do all kinds of calls if you want to do one, and then expose the program. And then if there's interest, then of course, I'm here to communicate to anyone in that realm about what we are, what we do, and how, and then working with your team on what it would look like to roll this out in Denmark. So setting up an antivirus team, the people who are really passionate about this, getting them together, and then making a list of people you know that you can talk to. And you can even categorize also people who you know that would be willing to donate to this, because the school system may say, we don't have money for this, but who would pay for this? I don't know, maybe in Denmark your government would be willing to pay for this, which would be great. It'd be rare, but it'd be great. And so that could be a great conversation to have. So who do you know in education that your team needs to know? Who do you know that could be a donor? And then who do you know that could be a connector? So those are 3 focuses. The 4th focus is a fundraiser. Once you get down that point, what kind of fundraiser could you have?
Okay.
And there is no better person to ask for money than John Maxwell when he comes in that door.
Okay. And is there a way to send our team or send to Randy one sample of an antivirus sample so that our team, even though our team is fluent with what Roundtables looks like, because we've done them for a long time, to see what this one looks like so that they know what they're talking about?
Like, you want a PDF of the book is what you're asking for?
No, not a PDF of the book. I mean, that's great if we can get a PDF, but even if it's just one antivirus principle so that they know what it looks like and feels like compared to Roundtables.
Sure, of course.
Okay.
Yes, I could definitely send that to you.
Ideally, if it would be possible to get one that says, protected or whatever, how you do sometimes with the new values when they come out. If we could get PDFs of this that I could screen share with everyone on our calls, we could go through that. That would be very, very helpful. And that saves us having to ship everything over there. Absolutely.
We do have that. I think it's even protected that it can't print.
Good.
So like if you would try to print it, it wouldn't print out. It would be blank pages because of the protected script. So yeah, I definitely have something that I can do. And I have all kinds of PowerPoints that I can share with the group too. And it has a sample of what the roundtable looks like, the actual curriculum, like the value, what the value would look like.
Yeah, if you want to send all of that to my email address, that's randy@randystroman.com.
Okay.
And then I will get that off to everybody. Okay, we've got just a few minutes left here. I thought I saw Fleming waving his hand some time back. Did you have a follow-up question?
No, yes, I had. No. No, I think that it's possible to, what you were talking about was donors and connector. I'm the connector. And John Maxwell is the sponsor. No, we'll find the money in our country. We actually have schools paying about $50,000 for bullying teaching for 6 months in classes in Denmark, because the pupils are bullying each other. And then the school's hiring in consulates to do that. And what I hear is that your curriculum is actually taking care of a lot of stuff. And as I said,
you got it.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. I love that you said that, because also, if I can tag onto that with what you said, because I want to hear more about what you're saying with that school systems, but we are more than an anti-bullying program. We are what education curriculum is calling an SEL. We're social and emotional learning program. So we are about setting goals. Our program empowers students to set goals, be resilient, combat bullying, and have a positive self-image. Yeah. So it's more than bullying.
It's more than
bullying. Go ahead. Keep going.
It's a lot more. It's the self-image. It's the self-picture. And we really need that in our country. And if we get the material, and if we get an estimated cost of 10 weeks education, what is the cost of a 10-week education with a supervisor? And then we can actually start connecting with people with money who actually, I think, would donate money. And as I said, we have private schools and border schools and everything. So
if we started working with that, I think I heard you say $30 per student per course. Is that going to be a good ballpark for us?
I would say start there. Yes, start with an estimate of $30 a student for 10 weeks.
So you're saying, and we have classes of 30.30. That is $900.
Yeah, if you had 30 students, yes.
That's for free in our country. $6,000 for a 10 weeks education program for a whole class. That is for free.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Fleming. Let me just ask a couple of quick follow-up questions here. How do you execute this in the classroom, and how much time does it take? I heard you say if they spend a half a day, then I heard you say if they spend a full day. So how do you execute? Do they go into one classroom and then go to another classroom an hour later? Or how long does it take to go through each lesson?
Yes. Okay. So we go by the bell schedule. So let me ask a question. Do you know how long, say in civics or social studies, history class, how long would a student be in that class period? Would it be an hour?
Who on the call has the answer to that question? Okay, Dorota?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, 45 minutes.
Yes.
Or we have like a double class where they don't have a break in between. So
somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Perfect. Our teaching segment, if you open up our Mentor's Guide, we are basing our teaching segment on a one period. That's what we call a period of a class. So it's anywhere above 45 minutes to an hour and 6 minutes is a typical teaching time for this program. If you have an hour and 15 minutes, that's great, because then you don't have to rush as much if you had 50 minutes. But that's our target is most of our school systems are about 53 minutes, because in teaching time, 50 minutes is considered 1 hour in teaching time. So we have about 53 minutes is what a typical teacher would teach every period, whether it's math, science, or English class. So that's what we go by.
So then,
a teacher will be there, a mentor would be there for every week until they see all of the students that they need to see, and then they can go home.
Okay, so they're gonna are they in theory then working 5 days a week in a different classroom each hour, each period in some of the larger schools?
Yes. So in some of the larger schools, we need to send in 2 mentors rather than 1 mentor, or 3 mentors, depending on how big the school system is.
Okay.
So anywhere, I can give you this now. If you have a school system, say it's Denmark Middle School, right, and they have 200 kids, you probably need one mentor. Anything above 225, you might need 2 mentors.
Okay, excellent. And so we've got that. And so then they're going to come in every week into that same classroom?
Yep, every week. And so it's called a house. So if the principal or the dean says we want you to come into social studies or history class every single week, then they pick what day of the week they want that to happen. And so whether that be a Tuesday or Monday or whatever, Thursday, you go into social studies every single Thursday for 10 weeks.
Okay. And I'm sure that we're going to have to learn the requirements in Denmark, and maybe some of you know that, but here in the U.S., do your mentors have to meet state requirements of a substitute teacher?
We do. We have our own personal requirements, and one of them is maturity, because we have some that are just graduating from college and that have an education degree, but they haven't been hired yet. So we do an interview process, and we can make sure that we get that to you, questions we ask. But we're looking for maturity, we're looking for passion, and then they have to be willing to be FBI or background checks. So that protects your organization. Yeah. So that's fingerprinting. And now we would then follow in line with what Denmark says their code is, to have because this would be considered a volunteer coming into the school system, because they're not paid for by the Department of Education or the school districts. So whatever their guidelines would be, we would need to follow that.
And so then whose liability insurance do they operate under, yours or under the schools?
They operate underneath the 501c3 that is funding them.
Got it. Okay.
That's a great question.
They each, as a 501c3, are required to maintain some type of liability coverage.
Yes, we do have a liability coverage with most of our funding sources. Yes, it would be under there.
And then at the end of the 10 weeks in that classroom, what happens? Do they just go back to their regular education? Or do you have them go back through? Now, you talked about volume 1 and volume 2. So in theory, is there really 16 weeks?
There could be 16 weeks after the 10 sessions. After the 10 sessions, the students would be finished with volume 1. Then the mentor leaves the building. Volume 2 is to have a continuation, and somebody within the school system who said, I really like this program, facilitate the roundtables. That way, the funding source is no longer having to pay financially for somebody to be sent in, and also the books. We have 3 schools right now doing volume 2. The funding source that we have here locally said, I will pay for the books, but not the mentor. But somebody in the building, another teacher or a guidance counselor or social worker said, I will be willing to teach that program.
Okay, very, very good. Okay, we're out of time, but let me just do a quick scan of the screen. If you have a quick question, just wave at me and I'll unmute you. It looks like everybody's good. Henrik, one quick question. Go ahead.
Very short, Tanya. I have been asking for quite some time now to get an approach to get into schools and teach children to become better at motivating themselves. So you are a godsend for me. I think God has answered my prayers and sent you to me. So I'm very grateful. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we all would second that notion. So
thank you.
Tanya, thank you very much for your time today. This has been very informative. We'll get with the team next week on our call and have a very open and broad discussion about this. And as we start to put a plan together, I'm sure that we're going to come back to you with more questions and need some additional information. So,
of course, and I will be sending all of my attachments to you, Randy, so that you can pass them on to the group.
Yes, sounds great. And Fleming, you had a comment, question?
No, I was just talking about the last part of security and teaching and so on. We also have the same system in Denmark. And what I would have said when I rose my finger was that it would be nice to have the material for next Monday. Tanya. So if you're going to send it to Randy and he can send it to us so we can prepare for Monday. 1 week.
Perfect.
Forward. Thank you very much.
I will get on that today.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. You in Denmark have a great evening. And Tanya, you and I get to finish out our afternoon. So do it in style.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And everybody have a wonderful evening and day.
All right. God bless.